Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Once again, welcome everyone to this class. In this class, we are going to talk about communications system. We are going to discuss about types of information, the meaning of communication, the model of communication, what are the elements of communication, and then we are going to talk about bandwidth, the definition of bandwidth, types of bandwidth. We are going to actually briefly discuss about the meaning of bandwidth and how we actually use it in our daily basis lives. So before we move on to define the types of communication, let us revise together the communication model that we have discussed in our previous class, which is communication model by Shannon-Weaver. And we have mentioned that the Shannon-Weaver mathematical model has some main elements that we need to consider and understand to actually make sure that we understand the meaning of communication process. What are the elements of the communication? So first we have the information source, which actually the sender that carries the message. And this message actually going to be transferred through the channel which we call the medium of communication. And then through this channel, the receiver is going to actually receive this message from the source, okay? And then we make sure that it goes to the final destination successfully. But we actually need to consider that this channel or medium of communication is actually free of any noise sources, and we are going to actually talk about noise sources in details in this class. So that is the communication model by Shannon-Weaver that we need to understand before we move on to our class today. The types of information communication. We have three main categories of information communications, which are by source, by destination, and by purpose. And we are going to talk about each of these categories in the next slide. The first type that we have is by source. And in this type, we have actually vocal, non-vocal, verbal, and non-verbal. And to understand the differences between these four categories, the vocal could be verbal and non-verbal, and non-vocal as well could be verbal and non-verbal. For example, for the vocal verbal communication, it could be actually the spoken words, just by to other people, by speaking to other people. And then we have the non-verbal communications, which actually the non-lexical component of communication by speech. For example, the intonation, the pitch and speed of speaking, the hesitation, the volume of our speaking, the speaking rate, the speed, and so on. And then for the non-vocal, for the verbal communication, we have the writing, the sign language, and so on. And then for the non-verbal communication, for non-vocal, we have, for example, the body language. We have the facial expressions, we have eye contact, body language, and so on. The second type, which is by destination. And this type, we could actually categorize it to four main types, which are the intrapersonal communication, interpersonal communication, group communication, and public communication. The first type, intrapersonal communication, is actually the conversations that we have inside our heads. We don't actually talk to anybody else but inside our heads. And then we have interpersonal communication, is actually a communication between two people, okay? And these two people are influenced to each other, all right? And this type of communication occurs in pairs, like two people, all right? And then the group communication any type of communication that happens for three or more people. Three or more people, it's considered a group communication. And then finally we have a public communication, which is for example, a facilitator that is giving a speech in front of whatever audience. This is called public communication. Then we have the third type, which is by purpose. And this type, we could categorize it into two main types: the formal communication and informal communication. Formal communication is often, follows a specific structure when it happens, or specific channels, such as, formal emails to the clients and so on. Other than any formal communication could be defined as informal communication, which actually often flow freely in any direction, in any occasion. So that's these are the three main types of information communication that we actually need to know in this class. Okay, now let's move on and talk about bandwidth. What do we actually mean by bandwidth? And for us to understand the meaning of bandwidth, let's say that we have internet Wi-Fi, okay? And this Wi-Fi, we use it inside our home. And this Wi-Fi, all family members that are living inside our house, actually using this Wi-Fi. So there are actually multiple devices that is using this Wi-Fi. Laptops, tablets, smartphones, TVs, streaming movies, and so on. When you notice that the internet speeds seems to be going down as your use of internet goes up, then you want to consider getting more bandwidth to meet your internet use. So what do we actually mean? What is the meaning of bandwidth? It's still not clear. So I'm going to give you an example to be able to understand the meaning of bandwidth. Let's imagine that we have a highway. Okay, this highway is the internet network, and this highway has a lot of cars on it, traveling in the highway. Okay, so the highway is actually the net connection, and the cars are the data. The wider the highway, the more car that we have traveling in this highway at the same time, and the faster they actually reach their destination. So this is actually same goes to the internet network. Okay, same principles applies to data. And so the more bandwidth, the more information that could be actually transferred within a given amount of time. So if you use internet more frequently, there are actually multiple devices that is actually using the internet, so you need more bandwidth. Okay, the more you use connected devices to your network, it's more important to actually make sure your bandwidth increases as well. So as a conclusion, what can we define bandwidth? Bandwidth is actually a measurement amount of data that could be transferred from one point to another. But we once again we need to consider the output of the devices. How many devices that are using this network? For example, 10 laptops, 3 smartphones, and so on. So in this case, you may consider getting more bandwidth to make it even more easily, and the internet more the internet speed is up to your needs. And for the bandwidth needs types, we have two types, which are bandwidth signal processing or what is called analog bandwidth, which is actually frequency bandwidth or radio bandwidth, and it's measured in hertz. And on the other hand, we have the computing bandwidth, which is actually the rate of data transfer, not the frequency. Okay, these are the main differences between signal processing and computing. The first one is frequency bandwidth. The second one is actually the rate of the data transfer. The first one is measured in hertz. The second one is measured in bytes per second. I hope the bandwidth definition and types is clear to you now. All right. Remember when I have explained about the communication model, and I have talked about the noise, and noise could be actually anything. And let's talk about noise. So sometimes actually noise, could be audible. Sometimes it could be silent. But and noise actually can be a lot of different things. But no matter how loud or silent, still the noise is going to interferes with our communication. It's going to actually stop the communication or make it very difficult for us to deliver our information that we have as a sender or a receiver, or actually some environmental factors. Okay, so in this noise slice, we are going to talk about 4 types of noise. So the noise could actually happen from the sender side or the receiver side, or could be the environment, or could be a physical factors as well. Okay, so first type of noise that we have is actually the psychological noise. The psychological noise is actually when we come into a conversation which ideas about what other person is going to say. For example, when you go to a conversation and you predict that this person is going to be talking about this and this and that, you have already judged this person. This is what we call psychological noise. So whatever this person tells you or says to you, it's not going actually to change your opinion about them. So we can easily become blinded to their original message. And most of the psychological noise is pretty much impossible actually to free ourselves from. Thus, we actually need to consider, changing or controlling our beliefs when we actually converse with others that we have psychological noises from. And then we have the environmental noise, which is actually the summary of noise pollution from outside caused by, for example, transport, industrial, and recreational activities. For example, if you are in class and there is maintenance in the building, this is what we call environmental noise. Third type of noise, which is physical noise, which is actually any external or environmental stimulus that distracts us from receiving the intended message sent by communication. For example, the background sound. For example, if you are watching a video, this video has someone, teaching a software, but he's playing a music while he is actually explaining about the software. And then this background music is actually very high. You cannot even listen to his, words. So this could be actually a physical noise. One more example is that, for example, when you have a conversation with someone else, any conversation, and then while you two are talking, somebody else steps into the conversation, and you starts, greeting you, and then you will even, you will get to the point that you will forget about the conversation that you have in the first place with the other person. So this is actually considered to be a physical noise as well. The fourth and the last type of noises that we have is the semantic noise, and which occurs when grammar or technical language is used that the receiver cannot understand. For example, when you go to, for example, a speech, and this facilitator of this speech is talking, in a strange language. It's not your mother language, and then he used some very complicated words while delivering his speech. This could be a semantic noise. So these four types of noises that we actually have in a daily on our daily basis that we could actually get to know during this class. All right, that's very much about the class for today, because we are going to have a group activity which is going to consume some good time from the class time. So when we meet online, we are going to discuss about the group activity and which group should do what. So that's very much it for today's class. I hope everybody's safe, and please take care and see you next week. Bye bye.